they're very much feeling the computational constraints of the system when you're creating these open worlds.
And you know what? That's the thing then. You see some of it now, but in those times, I do feel like every year the technology moved. And maybe it's because same thing, we're like that my age at that time, where every year somebody was coming up with some new method or some new game system. And it was every year that innovation. And then, 3D acceleration comes along. And then these things come along. And then HD comes along. And it is true that as time goes on, there is visually a diminishing return in terms of what you're able to do on the screen. And there's a ton of work that goes into it now, because just rendering this cup to the perfect shine and material and roughness, and how does the global illumination off this wall, like it's a ton of work. Yeah. But you can pretty much do what you want now if you want to put the time in. Whereas then, okay, you can't do everything you want. So pick your battles really carefully, and technically you couldn't do what you want, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. How much trade-off is there now in how much effort you put into the realism of the graphics versus the story? And actually not even how much effort you put in, but is there a trade-off in the experience, the feel of the game in terms of realism and story?
Usually we will start with let the player have as much agency and do as many things as they can as possible. And we will sacrifice some graphic fidelity for that, some speed for that. We could make a game that, traditionally our games are, we okay with 30 frames a second as long as it looks really good and the simulation's running and all of those things. So we'll sacrifice some of that fidelity for the player experience in the kind of things that I do. But from like a manpower standpoint, the graphics programmers work on graphics, the artists work on art, and we have a awesome team of artists and designers and writers and programmers. It's usually where we find, as time goes on, the amount of art time that it takes to create a cup compared to what it used to be, that has increased. So we do use, like most people use, art outsourcing as well, so that we still relatively, compared to our industry and what we're doing, have smaller teams.
What about the experience of the beauty of the graphics? So like one of the most amazing things about Skyrim, and maybe you could say that about some of the other games, but for me, Skyrim is the outdoor. When you step outside,
yeah,
it's the outdoor scenery. So what does it take to create the feeling, especially of that, being outdoors, of nature, and just like lost in the beauty, whatever it is when you go hiking and you feel the awe of it? How do you create that awe? Is that graphics? What is that?
It's a lot of graphics. It's a lot of mood. We just talk about it in terms of tone. Mm-hmm. And those are, again, going back to my previous comment, the graphics are very, very important to us because, and we always push them, because when you're doing the kind of things we do where you step into a virtual world, it does have to have that moment of, wow, this feels real. I've never experienced this. And it's okay. I think it's okay to let just like the time settle. Meaning you step out, just how does the wind sound? How are the trees moving? How are the clouds moving? I enjoy strolling and watching the sunset. How does it land over the water? Like, it doesn't have to be like, hey, let's go, let's finish a quest, let's go kill things, let's figure out the next step, let's level up. Like, I like the quiet moments a lot. And I think when you play our games, you can tell we spend a lot of time on them. Then you watch like the weather roll in. I think that's just part of being that character, being that person in that space.
Yeah, I saw that there's a mod that removes all enemies. I've been meaning to do that, to just do like a live stream where for hours walk around Skyrim, and then answer questions and so on. That just feels that's a completely stress-free environment. It's just, you are, just like you said, in this moment in time. And it's so incredible. it feels as incredible as going hiking or something like that, but in in a totally different place, like Iceland or something like that.
Hmm.
This whole other surreal, ethereal place. It's yeah, it's incredible how you kind of create that. So graphics is a part of that, but also letting it the temporal aspect of that, like the wind, the rustling sound and look and all of that.
The soundscape is really, really important. And the sky, we spend a lot of time on the sky because it's taking up much more of the screen than a lot of people give credit for.
What about the rendering, the openness of it? Like, how do you,
There's a lot of level of detail, streaming work, and nowadays it's getting more common. Like, frankly, the systems are built better for it.
Mhm.
Hard drive speed is really prioritized. Like, they're so blazing fast. You take Skyrim and Oblivion and the fallouts of that 360 era. It was a lot of time spent on how do we get all this data streaming in as you move, and then levels of detail so you can see all the way, but not, crush the processor.